December 1974, Gombe National Park, Tanzania. A team of researchers watches 5 adult male chimpanzees move through the forest in single file. They do not feed, they do not call. They scan the canopy and the ground with unusual focus. They reach the southern edge of their territory and stop at the border. What happens in the next 20 minutes will rewrite what science thought it knew about animals. The patrol finds a lone male from a neighboring group. They attack him together. They hold him down. They beat him for nearly 10 minutes and leave him with injuries he will not survive. Until that day, scientists believed organized killing belonged to humans alone. Animals fight. Animals kill. But coordinated raids on neighbors, planned in advance, executed as a group, aimed at wiping out the other side completely, that was supposed to be our invention. Jane Goodall watched it happen. What she watched over the next 4 years forced biology and anthropology to ask a question nobody wanted to answer. Did we invent war, or did we inherit it? If chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, run organized military campaigns against their own kind, the roots of human violence reach back further than civilization, further than agriculture, further than the first city walls. They reach back to a common ancestor who lived around 6 million years ago, and the same instinct sits inside you right now, whether you want it or not. Today, you will see how the war started, how it ended, and what the science of the last 50 years reveals about where human violence really comes from. Stay until the end. The final piece changes everything you think about your own species. In 1960, a young English woman with no university degree arrived at Gombe. Louis Leakey, the famous paleoanthropologist, had sent her. He wanted someone without academic baggage to study chimpanzees in the wild. Jane Goodall sat in the forest for months. The chimps ran from her. Eventually, they accepted her presence, and she began recording behaviors nobody had documented before. She saw chimps making tools, stripping leaves from twigs to fish termites out of mounds. Science had defined humans as the tool-making animal for decades. Her observations destroyed that definition in one dry season. When she telegraphed Leakey, he wrote back a famous line: "We must now redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans." She also saw chimps eating meat. The scientific consensus said chimpanzees were peaceful vegetarians. Goodall watched them hunt monkeys, kill them by smashing them against trees, and share the meat among the group. The Academy resisted. Some senior primatologists called her observations amateur. The evidence kept stacking up. By the early 1970s, Goodall had earned grudging respect. Then came 1974, and primatology was about to face something far worse than tool use or meat eating. It started with a split. The community Goodall studied was called the Kasakela Group. By the late 1960s, tensions inside it began to rise. A subset of chimps started spending time in the southern part of the territory, away from the rest. By 1971, the split became permanent. 7 adult males, 3 adult females, and several juveniles broke away. The southern animals formed their own group, named Kahama. For a while, the two groups tolerated each other at the border. Then, the tolerance ended. In January 1974, 6 Kasakela males moved south in silence. They moved with what Goodall later described as a deliberate hunting gait. They did not vocalize. They did not feed. They scanned the canopy as they advanced. They found Godi, a Kahama male, feeding alone in a tree. The patrol surrounded the trunk. Godi dropped to the ground and tried to flee. Humphrey grabbed his leg. Figun and Jomio pinned his arms. The others beat him for around 10 minutes. They bit him. They stomped on him. When they finally moved off, Godi was bleeding from deep wounds across his body. He dragged himself away and was never seen again. This was the first observed intergroup killing in chimpanzees. Goodall and her team initially refused to publish what they had recorded. They feared the political consequences. They feared losing credibility. They feared, in Goodall's own words, that the world was not ready to know. The war did not stop. The patrol pattern repeated. Over the next 4 years, the Kasakela males systematically hunted down every member of the Kahama group. They moved as a unit. They picked off isolated targets. They struck when the southern group was scattered. The second victim was a male called Der. The third was Goliath, an old male who had once been the dominant chimp of the original combined community. The patrol attacked Goliath as he sat alone. They beat him for 18 minutes. Goodall recorded that he was an old friend of his attackers. They had groomed each other for years. They had played together as juveniles. None of that mattered. The patrol left him to die. By 1977, 5 Kahama males were dead or missing. The remaining 2, Sniff and Charlie, were killed during the next year. The adult females were either driven away, killed, or absorbed into the Kasakela group. Their juvenile offspring, in some cases, were killed by the same patrols. By the end of 1978, the Kahama community no longer existed. The Kasakela males expanded south into the conquered territory and began feeding in the fruit trees that had once belonged to their former neighbors. If you are still here, hit the like button. It pushes this video to more people who would want to see it. Goodall called what happened a 4-year war. Critics said war is a human concept and should not be applied to animals. They argued the killings were accidents, side effects of researcher provisioning, or unique pathology in one disturbed group. The data kept coming in from other field sites. At Mahale in Tanzania, researchers recorded chimpanzee patrols and killings. At Kibale in Uganda, John Mitani and David Watts watched a community called Ngogo conduct repeated raids over a 10-year period. The Ngogo chimps killed at least 21 members of a neighboring group between 1999 and 2008. After the killings, they took over the territory. A 2014 study in Nature compiled data from 18 chimpanzee communities across Africa. The conclusion was clear. Intergroup killing is a regular feature of chimpanzee behavior in the wild. It happens whether humans are nearby or not. It happens whether or not the chimps are being fed by researchers. It is part of how chimpanzees live. The same study compared chimpanzees to their closest cousins, bonobos. Bonobos live south of the Congo River in similar forests. They share 98.7% of their DNA with chimpanzees. And bonobos do not do this. They do not patrol. They do not raid. They do not kill rival group members in coordinated attacks. Their intergroup encounters often end in mingling and grooming rather than killing. 2 species, almost identical genetically, with completely different patterns of organized violence. Why the difference? The leading hypothesis points to female social structure. Bonobo females form strong alliances with each other and constrain male aggression. Chimpanzee males operate in tight coalitions that females cannot override. Different social architecture, different outcomes at the group level. This brings us to the question nobody can avoid. Humans share a common ancestor with both chimpanzees and bonobos. That ancestor lived around 6 million years ago. If chimps run coordinated lethal raids, and humans run coordinated lethal raids, and bonobos do not, 2 interpretations are possible. One says the common ancestor was peaceful, and both chimps and humans independently evolved organized violence. The other says the ancestor was already capable of coordinated killing, and bonobos lost the trait while chimps and humans kept it. The evidence leans toward the second. Archaeologists have found mass graves from prehistoric human groups going back at least 10,000 years. The Nataruk site in Kenya, dated around that period, contains the remains of 27 people who appear to have been massacred by a raiding party. Skulls fractured by blunt force. Obsidian projectile points lodged in bone. Bodies left where they fell. These were hunter-gatherers, before agriculture, before property, before kings and armies. They were already doing what the Kasakela Patrol did at Gombe in 1974. So here is where it leaves you. War is older than civilization, older than language, older in some form than the human species itself. The instinct to band together with people who look and smell like you, and to organize lethal violence against those who look and smell like someone else, predates everything we usually call culture. It sits in a deep layer of primate social biology that we share with one of our two closest living relatives. This does not mean war is inevitable. Bonobos prove another path exists within the same genetic family. Different social structures produce different outcomes. Human societies have varied enormously in their levels of intergroup violence, and many have spent long periods at peace. The instinct is there, but the expression is shaped by how groups organize themselves and what alternatives to violence are available. The comforting story, where war is a recent invention, a mistake of civilization, a problem we created and can therefore uninvent through better ideas alone, does not survive contact with the evidence. The patrols at Gombe walked through the forest in silence in 1974, 6 million years after our line split from theirs, and they did exactly what human warriors have done for tens of thousands of years. If you want to see how this connects to actual human prehistory, subscribe.